knew I was.
Hey folks, let's spend some time with some friends up north. I'm Ben Cominos from WHBY in Appleton. Joining us from WCPT in Chicago is Patti Vasquez, and from the Minocqua Brewing Company, here's Kirk Bangstad. We've got the usual suspects from our Substack page with us, as well as a special guest or two. Wherever you are, welcome, you're up north.
Hey, everybody. Patti, lead me in, Patti. Talk to me.
She's muted. There's no way she knows she's muted.
This is hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Yes.
Yay!
There you go. Too many buttons. Here we go. Hey, everybody. It's the Up North Podcast. Take it away, our fearless leader, Kirk Bangstad.
All right. Hey, everybody. We have a packed show today. Patti Vasquez is always letting us hijack her entire radio station in Chicago, WCPT 820. We've got Ben Cominos here from WHBY in Appleton. We have John Shelton, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers in Wisconsin. We have Senator Chris Larson, who is hanging out somewhere. I can't see his face quite yet, but he's here. We have Amy, whose dog just came and licked her in the face. And then last but not least, we have Bishop Paul Erickson, who is the bishop of Greater Milwaukee ELCA Lutheran Church. The reason a bishop is here with us today is in segments 2 and 3, we're going to be focusing in on what happens when ICE comes to Wisconsin like it's coming to Minnesota. It's already in Wisconsin. We'll talk about that. They're treating people badly, treating Wisconsinites badly as well, but it's not as bad, obviously, as it is Minnesota, and we got to know how to prepare for what's coming. In this first segment, we're going to talk about the funding, the DHS funding that's going to end by this Friday, which funds not only ICE but a host of other, the Secret Service, which I'd love to be unfunded, so the president had to fend for himself. But and then in the last segment, we're going to talk about a general strike and boycotting and those different resistance tools. So everyone, Patti, talk to us.
Yes.
What's going on with the DHS funding stuff, that's happening this week?
Well, the DHS funding expires February 13th. Congress has extended funding for most of the government, but only kept the Department of Homeland Security funded through February 13th while they negotiate over immigration enforcement policy. They want a lot of things like they want to make sure that everybody has, body cameras. They want to know about training, a lot of things that who knows if Republicans will come around to that. Congress passed a $1.2 trillion funding package on February 3rd that funds all federal agencies through September 30th this year, except DHS, which received a 2-week continuing resolution through the 13th. And there is a standoff that's stemming from the Democratic demands for reforms to immigration enforcement operations after the fatal shootings of two U.S. citizens in Minneapolis by federal agents last month. And there was testimony last week. If you didn't get a chance to catch it, I highly recommend that you listen to testimony from people like Marta Martinez, who was shot 5 times. And one of the agents bragged about how it was 5 bullets, 7 holes. So there were people that were shot before Renee Good, shot and killed before Renee Good. So please check out testimony when you get a chance.
Great. Thanks for the update, Patti. And as I've said before, I really believe the Democrats gave up a lot of our leverage. Our Democratic senators and congressmen and women gave up a lot of our leverage when they allowed other departments to be funded. The ICE is funded with $775 billion, no matter if we unfund them or not in this DHS bill. So we can't stop ICE with what's going on. We lost a lot of leverage. If you put the air traffic controllers on the line again, we would have had a lot more leverage, because without planes flying, rich people get mad. So unfortunately, I think we gave a lot away, but there's still a little leverage we have. Ben, what leverage do we have, and what does it look like going to happen by the end of the week?
Yeah, there's a lot of other agencies, TSA, FEMA, the Coast Guard, Secret Service, et cetera, that still require this kind of funding. And I do believe, to a certain extent, the Democrats have a bit of a blank check in order to prevent this, the government from staying open until we get some kind of concessions here. As Patti mentioned, there's 10 guardrails, as they call them. And what sticks out to me as a former sales guy is you oftentimes throw one or two over-the-top asks into a negotiation in order to remove them later. And of the 10, it's not like there's one that says your uniforms have to say pink and I'm a little baby on there or something like that. Like there is no, we're talking no masks, mandatory body cameras, judicial warrants. That's in the Constitution. Protect sensitive locations, no racial profiling, which basically means you can't do the job if you're a part of ICE. Force standards, identify agency and name, limit property damage detention or property detentions, no quota-driven arrests, and oversight and legal liability. Every single one of those is not only a reasonable ask, but it realistically should be an expected aspect of a federal agency here. And with the favorability ratings where they are, 22% of independents in favor of what's taking place, 5% of Democrats, which I'd love to meet those Democrats, and even 80% of Republicans. Or excuse me, 20% of Republicans not necessarily happy with what ICE is doing. I think the Democrats have a little bit of wiggle room here to keep the government closed for a while for a lot of these agencies and get a lot of these across the finish line. At least they should. We'll see. They've let me down before, but realistically, that seems like a reasonable ask as far as I'm concerned. And whether or not it happens, we'll find out. But I think it's a solid list and a reasonable amount of asks.
Okay, Ben. So we got Chris, Senator Larson here, and we got John Shelton here. I want to get both of your thoughts on what they're doing at the federal level, but I also we're going to kind of lead into ICE coming to Wisconsin. So, John, you're in Green Bay. What's the ICE? First of all, what do you think about the federal DHS funding? And then let us know what's going on in Green Bay with ICE terrorizing Packer fans.
Well, something was going on with my audio, so I couldn't hear anything Ben said, but he looked very animated and we're laughing a few times, so I'm sure it was great. I mean, I think, this speaks to some of, and maybe Ben said some of this, but some of my longstanding frustrations with treating this like the emergency that it is. And I agree with you, Kirk, like giving up leverage probably wasn't the best idea. But I still think there is some, and the fact that Democrats are at least making an issue out of this, like actually making an issue around authoritarianism, makes a lot of sense. Because, and now I can kind of lead into Green Bay. We don't have there hasn't been a lot of ICE activity here yet, but people here are scared, and Green Bay is a city essentially of immigrants now. Probably folks remember the stuff that happened late last year with the Cinnabon situation in the mall, and that got statewide news. We did a big press conference here to rally around the Somali community. And, our Somali neighbors have been, dealing with the brunt of a lot of this stuff, right? Latinos, of course, too. But with all this stuff happening in Minneapolis, like I have friends that are getting death threats. And so even if ICE isn't here yet, we're still feeling the effects. And it's absolutely essential that we have Democrats at the national and the state level, people like I know Senator Larson do, stand up against this stuff. So this is absolutely a defining moment in the fight against authoritarianism. We're definitely feeling it here, even if we haven't had the same kind of ICE presence that is in Western Wisconsin at the moment.
Gotcha. Thanks, John. Chris, Senator Larson, we're going to talk in the third segment about the deep plans for Milwaukee and how you're plugged in and how the bishop is plugged in. But on the ground right now, what's happening with ICE? And what do you think about the DHS first, and then talk to us about Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, look, Democrats should be doing everything that they can. We have the moral high ground. They have the moral high ground right now, and just simple things like following the Constitution, making sure that agents actually identify their agency and have their faces known to the public, and that the murderers who have killed people in Minneapolis are held accountable. I think those things are pretty zero depth entry agreements for most people, regardless of politics, that we should all be on board with. I do know that right now everybody is pushing local and state elected officials and leaders to actually have a plan that recognizes the situation for what it is, instead of starting from scratch, right? Or pretending that they're going to come into the state and that they haven't already done these horrible things in other communities. So seeing it for what it is, and we've got some good leaders. We'll talk about that later on in the show.
All right. So, Chris, so some things that I've read about, and because I'm kind of halfway I'm in Madison and I'm in Minocqua, and so a lot of folks in the 7th district, and that includes Hudson, which is kind of an exurb of Minneapolis. I mean, there's been a ton of ICE activity in like Hudson and Eau Claire, and like Baldwin, which is a tiny little town. There were 2 ICE agents that went to a Mexican restaurant in Hudson, and they and they went to eat, and then they showed up 3 hours later, and they detained the guys who prepared their food for them, which to me is nuts. Oh, that was in Baldwin. Sorry, Amy reminded me. Thanks. So yeah, I mean, it's happening there, and then I'm in Eau Claire every other week, and people are super freaked out there. I know early on Milwaukee, just because of Judge Dugan, that whole story when ICE came and tried to deport a guy that she was that was in the courthouse. Has ICE been kind of dormant in Milwaukee like since?
Yeah, no, look, they're still active. They're still there, but their actions have been targeted. And there is a facility that they're looking to build, that they are looking to move to in the northwest side. Right now, they have their facility just northeast of downtown, which is actually rented from Milwaukee School of Engineering. There are weekly protests outside of it. Some of the great groups that have already been mentioned, Voces de la Frontera, Milwaukee Turners, have been monitoring them. People are showing up in huge numbers. One of the aldermen in my district, Alex Brower, held a community hearing for folks to come out, and over 300 people were turned away. And they're very clearly demanding that their community have clear answers to this. I held 5 town halls. They increasingly became exclusively about what we are doing to protect not just immigrants, but everybody from the actions of a federal government that feels untethered to the Constitution.
We are broadcasting the Up North podcast. Of course, we are joined by Bishop Paul Erickson. We're going to talk to him in just a few moments. Ben Cominos, the host of Outside the Box on WHBY. They have an app, whatever. But go to WHBY.com to hear more about his show. And of course, a bunch of us write for the Minocqua Brewing Company of Substack. We also have John Shelton. We have Senator Chris Larson. Kirk Bangstad will take it back in just a moment. We all want to thank everybody for joining us for this broadcast. We're going to talk a little bit about churches and faith groups plugging into the resistance coming up in our next segment. We'll be right back after this on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal, KKNW 1150 in Seattle, and KTNF AM 950 Minneapolis, St. Paul. So glad you all are here.
Believe it or not, this podcast takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make Kirk & Company look like they know what they're doing. And a lot of the money that goes to pay our producers and editors comes from the sale of Progressive Beer. The Minocqua Brewing Company sells Progressive Beer all throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and online to about 30 states. Never seen it? That's likely because we've been banned by distributors for our unapologetically progressive voice. To find where you can buy Progressive Beer, go to MinocquaBrewingCompany.com and click the Retail Locations tab. That's MinocquaBrewingCompany.com and click Retail Locations. We get it. Your liver is under constant attack. Alcohol is a dictator that takes away your freedom. It distracts while doing its dirty work. It weakens your judicial system and governing bodies. If you give it too much power, you'll never be the same. We have the solution. 8647 THC Hop Water. 0 alcohol, 0 calories, tastes like patriotism. 8647 THC Hop Water. Liberate your liver. Buy 8647 THC Hop Water and Joint Session, our THC Orange Cooler, by going to thc.MinocquaBrewingCompany.com. That's thc.MinocquaBrewingCompany.com. The Up North podcast is sponsored by the Minocqua Brewing Company, who sells progressive beer online across the country. If you like the show today, please consider buying one of our beer subscription packages for yourself or a loved one. You can subscribe to the Democrat, the Liberal, and the Progressive, which delivers 4 packs of beer to your door for 6 months, a year, or 2 years. To find where you can subscribe to get Progressive Beer delivered to your door every month, go to MinocquaBrewingCompany.com and click Progressive Beer. That's MinocquaBrewingCompany.com and click Progressive Beer. The Minocqua Brewing Company is excited to partner with Brouhaha Coffee to create woke coffee. Get woke, go broke. That's what they say, right? Au contraire, mon frère. This gourmet coffee was awarded 2025 Roast of the Year at the Coffee Break Festival in Wisconsin, and it comes in both medium and dark roasts. Support our political action and enjoy fabulous coffee at the same time. For our Up North podcast listeners, go to the MinocquaMarketplace.com
Find coffee under the beverage tab and type in Up North to get 10% off your order. That's MinocquaMarketplace.com and use the promo code UpNorth.
820, where facts matter.
And thank you so much. We are back with the Up North podcast. Take it away, Kirk Bangstad from Minocqua Brewing Company.
Okay, now for our second segment, we've waited to uncover our dark horse guest for the evening. Our dark horse is actually the angelic horse guest, and it would be the bishop, the Reverend Paul D. Erickson, who's the bishop of the Greater Milwaukee Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, where I was raised in the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and very proud of that. Erickson earned a bachelor from Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter, which I love because my entire family went there except for me. And he got his Master's of Divinity from the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. He has done a lot of ministry work at South America, and he's now in Chicago and now in Milwaukee, and is plugged in to all of the resistance stuff that's happening there because, believe it or not, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world that churches and faith-based communities are the ones that people go to when they're in trouble and when they need support because that's what churches are all about. So, Bishop, in this segment, I want to talk about just kind of the overarching role that faith-based groups and churches play across America in kind of I shouldn't say resistance, but caring for those that are being terrorized by ICE, and you could call it resistance, but it seems a little bit like I'm bringing the brand of church down by making you belong to resistance. You're doing what churches do.
We are called Protestant, which is protest right in the middle of it. So, hey.
Sounds good. So give us an overarching, like maybe not just Milwaukee, but like, you're plugged into, the entire fabric of the Lutheran Church across America. Like, what are people doing around? Like, what are kind of some of the notable kind of moments? I remember, folks holding hands, like rabbis, bishops, whatever, holding hands at different places. What's going on there? And then talk about kind of what you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, I think you're right. There's a lot of folks who belong to many different kinds of faith traditions who are recognizing that it is part of our universal call. I mean, almost every religion has some kind of a directive to love your neighbor. And so when we see the government getting in the way of that love of neighbor, we've got to stand up and fight against it. So I spent 13 years living and working up in the Twin Cities, have lots of friends and family and colleague up in Minnesota. And for example, towards the end of January, they put out a call for clergy to show up in Minneapolis. I wasn't able to show up myself, but over 700 clergy came from all across the country and gathered there. This is right before Alex Preddy was shot on Saturday. So this is Thursday. It's like 20 below zero. And that's just the real temperature, not even the wind chill. And they marched on Friday and had thousands of people marching in the streets. And then there was, dozens of pastors lined up at the airport because Delta Airlines is cooperating with ICE, and they just knelt down and blocked the roads until they got arrested. So there's a certain, I think, to claim whatever moral authority we might have as members of the clergy and as members of faith traditions, we have to stand up. And similar to what happened in the civil rights movement, where folks are organizing and standing up and saying that this is not okay. No matter your politics, this is simply not. This is not how we're called to treat our neighbors.
Yeah, Bishop, I love the way that you're kind of describing what's happening here, and I absolutely support what you're saying. The elephant in the room is, though, a lot of the conservative party and the people that are kind of advocating for what's taking place, while I'm sure nobody on this chat actually buys into the way they pitch themselves, they kind of have laid claim to the religious right, as they call themselves. And I just sometimes wonder, and I'm not trying to pit anybody against one another here, but the question I have to ask is, how does it feel as someone who's dedicated their life to this service to kind of watch people using religion and the Bible and their beliefs almost as a bludgeon to kind of justify what it is they're doing in this nation on a regular basis here?
Well, it makes me pretty dang angry. So there is certainly a force of white Christian nationalism that is running through our government that we have to be very clear is a perversion of the gospel, and it is making the gospel or the religion the servant of the state. Dr. King, Martin Luther King, has said that the church is called to neither be the master of the state or the servant of the state, but the conscience of the state. And so we have to reject all forms of white Christian nationalism that try to say this is a Christian nation and only Christians belong here. That is simply antithetical to how I understand the faith. We are called to create a world in which every single person has a right to freedom and dignity and love. That's what God wants for them. I don't care what religion they are. They're called to live a full and rich life, and we're called to help them.
Bishop Paul, I just want to, say how encouraging it is, for me. I'm not really a religious person, but, seeing so many faith leaders step up right now, including the Catholic Church, right? To me, it just speaks to this larger history we have in this country, right? This isn't the first time that we faced injustice as a nation, whether it's, Catholic leaders in the late 19th century speaking up around industrialization, the horrors of industrialization and the really awful working conditions workers found themselves, or as you mentioned, the civil rights movement, right? And Dr. King, and there's a reason that the clergy were a big part of that, all the way through liberation theology in the 1980s and the sort of anti-imperialist impulse. And then, of course, there's as Sergio Gonzalez, who's a historian at Marquette, who does great work, has pointed out, there's a long history of the sanctuary movement in the United States, actually, that goes back decades. How do you see your place in that kind of broader history of clergy standing up for social justice, and you just talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important that we recognize, like, this isn't coming out of nowhere.
Right. I mean, this has always been part of this is why I went into ministry in the first place. I studied Spanish in Mexico and lived with a family that was involved with base Christian communities that were studying liberation theology, and they were making it real in the streets of Cuernavaca, Mexico. And I was like, I saw how religion had a power to change their lives and the lives of their neighborhoods. And I was like, that's what I want to be a part of. So that's what drew me in. And I've tried to follow in the footsteps of so many faith leaders who have put their lives on the line and put their faith on the line to make a difference for the sake of the neighbor. It always has to be driven towards not what is good for me or my church or my tradition. It has to be outward directed towards the neighbor, or it's not worth doing. So, I mean, Joe Ellwanger is a pastor in our tradition. March with Dr. King has been a longstanding advocate. He's someone that I regularly go to for inspiration. I want to be like him when I grow up.
Bishop, it's great that we got kind of a holistic view of how the church is playing a role in fighting back right now and protesting Protestantness. The next segment, we're going to talk about the actual strategies being put in place in Milwaukee when ICE comes in. But I want to set that stage by, can you just give us kind of the overlay of what the faith-based community, how they're organized right now in Milwaukee?
Sure. I think there's a number of groups trying to pull folks together. This isn't a centralized group. It is somewhat decentralized, but Wisconsin Council of Churches playing a big role across the state. Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee I'm a part of, MICA, Milwaukee Intercity Congregations Allied for Hope. Other faith traditions are coming together. And the thing that I'm finding in this time is that I am building relationships and getting to know people that I've only heard about before. Milwaukee has a tradition of good people doing good stuff, but they never really work together. This is forcing us to come together and saying, we got to set any differences we have aside because this is too important.
Got it. Chris, how are your constituents plugging into? Are they checking in with their churches? You got a lot of activists in your kind of world in Milwaukee. How are they plugging in?
Yeah, and look, I see Bishop Paul Bierikson at these events. He was outside of the DHS that I had already mentioned in Milwaukee the night that Renee Good was shot and killed. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and way back in the day, I wanted to be a priest. This is one where the UU, I think, made up 200 of the 800 bishops that were up in Minneapolis. And we are leaning in. So I'm curious if Bishop Paul, he might not have the ability to answer this with the timing, but I'm curious as more churches are coming in, I'm curious specifically about our new American Pope and how he is pushing this issue day in and day out about how we stand up for immigrants and the church stands up for immigrants. If that is bringing new people from the faith tradition over that have traditionally not thought about that role in the past.
We are continuing the Up North podcast. Thank you, everybody, for such an engaging conversation. I know I hate to cut everybody off, but we got to get to our break. We are joined by Senator Chris Larson. We have Ben Cominos from Outside the Box and WHBY, Bishop Paul Erickson, John Shelton from the AFT Wisconsin. He's the president of the AFT Wisconsin and branch. And we also have Kirk Bangstad, Monaco Brewing Company's fearless leader. More after this on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal, KK and W1150 in Seattle, and KTNF AM 950 Minneapolis, St. Paul. Thank you all for being here.
Believe it or not, this podcast takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make Kirk and Company look like they know what they're doing. And a lot of money that goes to pay our producers and editors comes from the sale of our progressive t-shirts. The Monaco Brewing Company sells t-shirts to supplement our beer sales because we've been banned by beer distributors for our unapologetically progressive voice. To find where you can buy our t-shirts, go to monacomarketplace.com and go to apparel. For Up North podcast listeners, get 10% off on all of our merch by going to monacomarketplace.com and typing in promo code UPNORTH. That's monacomarketplace.com, promo code UPNORTH. The Up North podcast is sponsored by the Monaco Marketplace, or what we like to call the Amazon for progressives. Every product sold on the Monaco Marketplace is made by a company that's pledged to never donate money to the MAGA movement. There's over 60 companies on our marketplace, and we sell everything from nuts to detergents to doormats. Save democracy with your wallet by shopping only at monacomarketplace.com. For Up North podcast listeners, save 10% on any order in the store by going to monacomarketplace.com and typing in promo code UPNORTH. That's monacomarketplace.com, promo code UPNORTH. We get it. Your liver is under constant attack. Alcohol is a dictator that takes away your freedom. It distracts while doing its dirty work. It weakens your judicial system and governing bodies. If you give it too much power, you'll never be the same. We have the solution. 8647 THC hop water. Zero alcohol, 0 calories, tastes like patriotism. 8647 THC hop water. Liberate your liver. Buy 8647 THC Hop Water and Joint Session, our THC Orange Cooler, by going to thc.monacobrewingcompany.com. That's thc.monacobrewingcompany.com. The Monaco Brewing Company is excited to partner with Brouhaha Coffee to create woke coffee. Get woke, go broke. That's what they say, right? Au contraire, mon frère. This gourmet coffee was awarded 2025 Roast of the Year at the Coffee Break Festival in Wisconsin, and it comes in both medium and dark roasts. Support our political action and enjoy fabulous coffee at the same time. For our Up North podcast listeners, go to the monacomarketplace.com, find coffee under the beverage tab, and type in Up North to get 10% off your order. That's monacomarketplace.com and use the promo code UPNORTH. Believe it or not, this podcast takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make Kirk and Company look like they know what they're doing. And a lot of money that goes to pay our producers and editors comes from the sale of our progressive t-shirts. The Monaco Brewing Company sells t-shirts to supplement our beer sales because we've been banned by beer distributors for our unapologetically progressive voice. To find where you can buy our t-shirts, go to monacomarketplace.com and go to apparel. For Up North podcast listeners, get 10% off on all of our merch by going to monacomarketplace.com and typing in promo code UPNORTH. That's monacomarketplace.com, promo code UPNORTH.
And we are back with the Up North podcast. We have with us, of course, our fearless leader guiding us through all of this, Kirk Bangstad. Take it away.
Okay, so this next segment I wanted to talk about. So Senator Larson has been doing, these listening sessions in Milwaukee, and they're being turned. He's just said in the first segment they're turning into what the heck do we do when Milwaukee becomes Minneapolis? Because it's coming. We know it's coming, and we don't want to. We want to be prepared. So in this segment, we actually want to, I'm just going to pretend we're in your listening session, Chris. Let's talk about, the plan in Milwaukee, and then I'll follow up and ask the bishop how the churches are plugging in.
Yeah, there is so much going on. I would say the first thing is people are getting active in their immediate neighborhood, of being able to get to know their neighbors in a time where Donald Trump and Republicans are really trying to divide us. We should be doing the opposite of what it is that they're trying to do. So people are getting to know their neighbors, are getting to know new people. and they're building those social networks for when the attacks do come. Of course, they're helping groups that are at the forefront of that, Voces de la Frontera and the group Comité Sin Fronteras. They've launched the Community Defense Network to prepare to keep immigrants safe. This is going to be part of mutual aid, as well as their hotline to make sure that there are ICE verifiers so that there are no false alarms, and then we, the public, will know exactly when ICE is in the area. There are more and more people getting trained on a regular basis. If you are interested, you should message them and sign up, but the numbers are in the hundreds. We actually had the Milwaukee Turners, which is another organization, doing legal training to make sure people know their rights, of what you can and cannot do to make sure you're keeping safe. Legal observing, so that folks are actually monitoring and recording the activities of ICE, and doing that in a legal way. And then when there are inevitably protests and marches, of making sure that they are there to legally observe and make sure that rights are being protected. And then immigration training, which is a free bilingual training called Immigrants, Refugees, and Undocumented People training, with downloadable slides covering encounters with ICE and what to do if agents come to your door, what to look for in terms of a warrant, and what rights you have. The big things to know on that is ICE can lie. You know, they can say that they're just trying to get you to open the door. You do not have to do that, right? And there's different ways to prepare for that, including simulations for when and if they do come. So there's a lot happening in the community. The most that people can do, right, is going to the very core of it, of loving your neighbor and not just retreating to fear and freezing, but to do more beyond that. We kind of, I don't know if we have time for a question. I was talking I wanted to go back to Bishop Erickson about the lean-in for if there is more church groups, because I feel like the best thing is to try and expand people out and bringing new people in. So I'm curious if he would be able to answer the question about bringing new people.
That's not just me, right? He froze. Okay, that's like
I think I knew where he was going with the question. Sorry, Chris, you froze up for a sec. Yes, I think this is a time, certainly, it's all hands on deck. Like we had an interfaith prayer vigil the Monday after Alex Preddy was shot, and we put it out kind of last minute, and there were people calling me who I would never expect to hear from, saying, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. So there is, I think, a movement that is happening. And I think certainly, as you mentioned, Pope Leo leading the way within the Catholic tradition. There's a lot of folks. This, like I said, this is not a centralized movement that we're following kind of one charismatic leader. This is diffused, and it is it is kind of a grassroots movement, and everyone needs to roll up their sleeves and get to work. So what we're doing in the church is certainly plugging people into all of the trainings that Senator Larson mentioned, and getting to know the food pantries in your neighborhood. Do they have, every one of our churches has some connection to a food ministry, right? So people I know in Minnesota says that 90% of the activity there is mutual aid. It's the stuff that's taking care of the people who are who are most vulnerable. I know people who are showing up at a restaurant, the same restaurant, every day. They take a 2-hour shift, they have lunch there, and they just observe to make sure, because it's owned by immigrants, it's staffed by immigrants. They want to make sure that someone is in that restaurant in case ICE shows up. So they're taking turns. They have a street corner. They're there every day from 9 until noon or whatever the schedule is. So church people are ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work, because it's all hands on deck.
Bishop, the reason we were, that you're on tonight is because we talked earlier, because the Monaco Brewing Company, we have a loud mouthpiece, and everybody's got their role. And so I think our role is kind of settling into being a mouthpiece for what's happening and to get the word out for people. And that's why we talk, because you're really active on the ground in Milwaukee. How can people, how can faith church folks, do they go to, where do they go? Obviously they go to their churches, but can you kind of lay out for people the easiest way to kind of get involved right now in Milwaukee?
Well, I think there are a number of networks, certainly finding out from your local congregation, who are we plugged into? So there are, I mean, you could have a full-time job in the city of Milwaukee right now, going to all of the meetings and all of the protests. There's a never shortage of places to show up. There's a group of people who are learning protest songs. They're going to call the Justice Singers, and they're just going to show up at events to start singing and changing the tenor from this kind of violent confrontation to saying, look, we're just trying to love our neighbors, and music can help shift the tenor of those kind of confrontations. We're going to be training chaplains, protest chaplains, who can go out and just, again, try to take the temperature down when things get to be confrontational. Let's focus on what's important and try to save some of the worst things from happening, as we have seen in Minneapolis. We need money. There's going to be folks who are going to need to. A friend of mine is a pastor in Minnesota, said she has an annual fund for emergency situations. It ran out in 2 weeks. The whole year's fund was used up in 2 weeks because they're taking care of people who own restaurants, who can't take their kids to childcare, who need to stay home from work. All of those kinds of things. It's just caring for our neighbors. So we need money. We need volunteers. We need people who can drive food to people who don't want to sit and wait in line in the food pantry, but we'll deliver the food to you. So there's a lot of places to get involved, and you don't have to, shout at an ICE agent and get really confrontational to be part of the resistance. There are many entry points.
I actually have a question here for Senator Larson about what's going on in Milwaukee. I've mentioned this on this show before, and I don't want it to sound like I'm saying we shouldn't be prepared or shouldn't be thoroughly ready for some kind of nonsense to take place in Wisconsin. But out of curiosity, what are you hearing on a political front in terms of the way I've phrased this is the Trump administration isn't afraid to send ICE to Chicago or to Minneapolis because those are states that are never going to go red anyway, and they're kind of doing this for scare tactics. We have statewide races in Wisconsin where I'm a firm believer that we're a purple enough state that enough people in this state will be disgusted by any type of overbearing, over-the-top ICE presence in the state of Wisconsin. Are you getting any feel for that on the ground? Can you tell if there's the political will, maybe even in the state Senate or the Assembly, from the Republicans who are maybe like, look, don't send them here. I'm already with the way the maps are drawn now, we're already in a 50-50 district, and we don't need this albatross hanging over our neck. Am I Pollyannish thinking that way, or is there a little bit of that going on?
I mean, I hope you're absolutely right. There was actually a public statement made by Scott Fitzgerald, who used to be a Senate Majority Leader for the state legislature, and he is now a congressman, of course, for Waukesha in that area. And he publicly said we don't need ICE, and think most of this can end up being handled here. So I think he understood the political implications that having ICE in the state is something that really is an albatross, because it hangs it around the local politicians, including those at the state level. We had session today. There is a stunning lack of engagement on what is happening at the national level. They do not want to be talking about this, but there is a conflation. People don't understand the distinction between what's happening federally, what's happening at the state level, and what's happening at the local with Republicans. They all get that they're beholden to Donald Trump because they refuse to speak out against him, and they recognize how much of this is not helpful to their base. So I don't think it'll protect us forever. I will say that they already have their eyes on Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin was one of the first places where they went after Hannah Dugan, judge, when she was specifically asking for a judicial warrant. And because they did not have that, she sent them someplace else. The understanding from the locals was like, well, of course you acknowledge and you give federal agencies whatever they want. That in the intervening time has proven not to be the widely accepted protocol, and they are wearing thin, right? Everything that they're saying is a complete lie.
Uh-oh. I guess that means it's my turn. That's Senator Chris Larson. I have a question actually for John Shelton.
AI cuts Larson off when he's getting long-winded.
We spoke to a teachers union yesterday, actually, out of Minnesota. So, John, I wanted to ask you, because obviously the kids are terrified. The teachers are trying to do the best to protect their children. Folks are staging walkouts and things like that. What are you hearing from your members?
Yeah, well, first of all, tremendous amount of solidarity and support for folks in Minnesota, right? So like we've had members participating in rallies pretty much across the state. Just last Friday, I was at a rally that our faculty and staff union put together in Madison, and it was like the third rally of the day, right, including a march. But this was just our local union in conjunction with some students, and so these things are happening everywhere, and we're the next state over, right? So like people recognize this is coming here, and I think it's important to recognize like these are not just like blue areas that ICE are going into or potentially
Yep.
targeting, but like they're union areas, right? Like I was saying this recently at a meeting of AFSCME retirees. There's a reason they're going into into places like Los Angeles and Chicago and Minneapolis, and a reason why they would go into Madison or Milwaukee. It's because these are organized areas, and in times of authoritarianism, it's always labor unions that are, as with the clergy, that are leading the charge against authoritarianism. So we're in complete solidarity. We've been doing everything that we can, not just to support folks in Minnesota, but also, I mean, we have members that actually, work in Western locals that live in Minnesota, and we're at some of the big rallies there, including the day-long strike. But we're also preparing here for what happens. And with Minneapolis as sort of the template, like we feel like we kind of have some ability to do that because we know what it's going to look like, right?
Excellent. I'm so glad you guys are prepared. I don't mean to cut you off. We're going to run to a break so we can get our last segment in. That's John Shelton, AFT president in Wisconsin, Senator Chris Larson, Ben Cominos, Bishop Paul Erickson, and of course Kirk Bangstad from Monaco Brewing Company. Let's take a break here and be right back in a moment for Up North Podcast.
Jonas. Believe it or not, this podcast takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make Kirk and Company look like they know what they're doing. And a lot of the money that goes to pay our producers and editors comes from the sale of progressive beer. The Monaco Brewing Company sells progressive beer all throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and online to about 30 states. Never seen it? That's likely because we've been banned by distributors for our unapologetically progressive voice. To find where you can buy progressive beer, go to MonacoBrewingCompany.com and click the Retail Locations tab. That's MonacoBrewingCompany.com and click Retail Locations. The Up North podcast is sponsored by the Monaco Marketplace, or what we like to call the Amazon for progressives. Every product sold on the Monaco Marketplace is made by a company that's pledged to never donate money to the MAGA movement. There's over 60 companies on our marketplace, and we sell everything from nuts to detergents to doormats. Save democracy with your wallet by shopping only at MonacoMarketplace.com. For Up North podcast listeners, save 10% on any order in the store by going to MonacoMarketplace.com and typing in promo code UpNorth. That's MonacoMarketplace.com, promo code UpNorth. The Up North podcast is sponsored by the Monaco Brewing Company, who sells progressive beer online across the country. If you like the show today, please consider buying one of our beer subscription packages for yourself or a loved one. You can subscribe to the Democrat, the Liberal, and the Progressive, which delivers four packs of beer to your door for 6 months, a year, or 2 years. To find where you can subscribe to get progressive beer delivered to your door every month, go to MonacoBrewingCompany.com and click Progressive Beer. That's MonacoBrewingCompany.com and click Progressive Beer. Believe it or not, this podcast takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make Kirk and Company look like they know what they're doing. And a lot of money that goes to pay our producers and editors comes from the sale of our progressive t-shirts. The Monaco Brewing Company sells t-shirts to supplement our beer sales because we've been banned by beer distributors for our unapologetically progressive voice. To find where you can buy our t-shirts, go to MonacoMarketplace.com and go to Apparel. For Up North podcast listeners, get 10% off on all of our merch by going to MonacoMarketplace.com and typing in promo code UpNorth. That's MonacoMarketplace.com, promo code UpNorth.
WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Sorry, I missed my telling everybody we had 10 seconds to come back. It's the Up North podcast with Kirk Bangstad, Monaco Brewing Company, leading the way. Take it away, Kirk.
Okay. So the gist of our conversation today is we're all afraid of what ICE might do in Wisconsin and when they're going to descend on us, like when they're, like they descended on the Twin Cities. We're trying to defund ICE. The Democrats are trying to defund ICE at the national level with this DHS bill. We hope they retain some leverage and help us out a little bit down here among the commoners. But there's also other resistance tactics that I've been talking about for an entire year, and the only reason I've been talking about it for an entire year is because I made friends with John Shelton and Senator Chris Larson, and we're all reading what we got to do if we don't have free and fair elections, which Trump's trying to cancel in about 9 months. John, we're talking about general strikes, and I got, if I have a labor guy on our panel, I'm not going to not talk about this. So what are we hearing after? We were in our text chats saying now's the time. As soon as Alex Preddy was murdered, we were in our text chat saying now is the time. This is going to do it. So now, what is labor? Did it push labor at all?
All right, well, let's start here. And I wrote about this in my Substack over the weekend. Hopefully people get a chance to read that. But I mean, what Trump is doing is deeply unpopular. He's losing support even with a lot of Republicans. And we should start with that, because what that means, and Kirk, you've been banging the drum on this for a long time, and I agree with you. We don't know at what point Trump might try to invoke the Insurrection Act or do things to, seriously interfere with the elections this fall. So that's a real possibility. We have to be prepared for that. What happened in Minneapolis, the general strike. I don't know if anybody knows the last time there was a general strike in Minneapolis. It was 1934, led by Teamsters, shut down the city. So it's possible to do this, but this is what we saw in Minneapolis is like the first thing in recent memory that I can even remember. And it was led not just by unions there, but unions were a big part of leading that. So, I think the problem is it's hard to. I know there are talks. Chris, I'm sure, has heard a lot about this as well. There are talks for a general strike planned here in Wisconsin. I don't feel like I should talk too much about that because we don't want to say sort of what the all the logistics of that and put the information out there. But those conversations are really happening, and they're happening across the state. And there's actually a specific target date for that, which maybe that's out there, and if so, somebody else can say it. But I don't want to say that right now. But I think with that kind of planning in the works, I think folks could move much more rapidly if and when ICE comes into the state of Wisconsin in huge numbers to pull people out into the streets much more quickly. And we've been building that muscle right now with all these demonstrations that are happening. Just in Green Bay today, a bunch of high school students, this is huge for us, walked out and we're demonstrating downtown to basically abolish ICE. So, you could have labor unions kind of leading on this. This is something AFT Wisconsin, as a sanctuary union, we are deeply interested in being a part of. But I think there's all these other civic groups too. And the question is, how do you move rapidly and scale up? And I think Minneapolis has given us the template, and I'm really encouraged that these conversations are happening here already.
Awesome, John. So,
no, I was sorry. I'm so deep in the conversation about labor, and I know the challenge that everybody has, but I know you don't want to share the day, but how should people get ready? I think that's one of the things that people want to know is what resources can they turn to? What should they think about in planning ahead?
Yeah, I mean, so the big thing is if you are in a workplace and you have a union, you need to join your union. And it's not important to join just to pay dues or be tapped into something. It's also important that you join so that you can push your leadership to be a part of taking more militant action, right? And if you don't have a union, start one. I mean, even if you don't have a large amount of people, setting at first, setting that, and even if you're not collective bargaining yet, right? Setting in place that nucleus of folks that can quickly call on people and bring them in. That's going to be really, really important. So you should absolutely do one of those two things. If you're retired or you're not in a workplace where that's possible, think about tapping into some other civic organizations that might be connected to unions. Or if you're part of an organization like Indivisible, for example, ask them to connect with local unions that can be a part of this planning and really work together. We all need to be pulling in the same direction. What we have right now is not a persuasion problem. Everybody, a vast majority of people understand how the kind of tactics that ICE is doing and how that threatens as Senator Larson said, our constitutional liberties. What we have is an organizing problem, and the question is, how do we continue to get people to pull together? And that's what we need to be focusing on.
All right, so general strikes. I'm reading from the Resistance Bible here. General strikes are the most important tool that we have, the most important nonviolent tool that we have outside of elections, in order to affect regime change. If all hell breaks loose. But the other tactic, which is extremely important as well, that has been used to some degree of success already in America, is boycotting. That we've been boycotted. Teslas have been boycotted. Spotify has been boycotted to some degrees of success. And the reason you boycott is because when you have a society that is owned by oligarchs, we have monopolies in America, and these guys have an undue influence on Trump's regime. So if you can separate the oligarchs from the dictators, from the oppressors, which is from fascism, if you make it harder for really rich dudes to support fascism than just to support democracy, then they'll support democracy because they care about money more than they care about oppression. Trump cares about oppression. Stephen Miller cares about oppression, but the rich guys just care about making more money. So the reason boycotting works is is if you can do it enough to actually make the rich guys pay attention and have some pain. So this month, February, is an important month for the Minocqua Brewing Company. And so I hate having to plug stuff because I love the conversation, but it's an important month because I've been working on this for an entire year, and we have created a website that, if we have the funding, can become the Amazon for progressives, which will allow us to buy a substitute product from anybody who makes a product that Amazon might sell, that if they're bending the knee to Trump, we'll collect the companies that haven't bent the knee to Trump, and you can substitute, and you can boycott easily and affordably, but we got to raise money to do that. And so this month we're raising $150,000 to keep this Minocqua marketplace going. So I'm going to plug that. Go to the Kickstarter website and type in Minocqua Marketplace, and you can donate to that Kickstarter. Ben, are boycotts important to you? Do you think they work?
Yeah, what's interesting, Kirk, I think this is because I only ever read like 20% of the emails that I ever receive. But you and I did our office hours yesterday, and I didn't even realize that this was happening when I told you that the left needs to get their act together in terms of how they boycott. And I gave examples like Bud Light or the Buzz Lightyear movie, and showing that conservatives, when they're ticked about something, no matter how stupid that cause may be, they seem to find a way to rally the troops and really enact the kind of change that they want to see. And we as leftists and liberals sometimes are lagging on that front. And I think having the necessary resources or information or capacity to know where the boycott should be aimed, I think is a hell of a tool to have that would help people really start to enact that kind of change. Because we watched a 2-year campaign for Bud Light to be like, no, trust us, we're back to normal, and we have the same capacity. There's more of us than there are of them. So it's absolutely effective. We've seen it happen, and it'd be great to aim this at companies that deserve it a little bit.
And by the way, Kirk, I mean, you guys have all seen how much people are reacting to this and how many people are thrilled. And I also want to mention, so with Goods Unite Us, I think we also need to remind folks to go visit Goods Unite Us, because even now you can find out. I try to make sure that I'm it's more blue on that graph than red. So at any rate, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We actually have about 50 seconds if anybody wants to. Bishop, I want to ask you this before we go. If you just let folks know any websites that you want us to go to support the work that you are doing.
Well, certainly, probably some of the main. I also want to give a shout out to Forward Latino, that's doing a whole lot of training and organizing across the nation in 21 different states, but they're doing really, really good work, and they're helping to draw a lot of folks together. So Forward Latino, Voces de la Frontera, those are the two main groups that I'm working with in the Milwaukee area. And there is no wrong place to help. We need everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, John Shelton, Senator Chris Larson, Ben Cominos, Bishop Paul Erickson, Kirk Bangstad. Everyone go to MinocquaBrewingCompany.com. We could use your support. Don't forget to sign up for the Substack as well. You can catch our work every single day throughout the weekend. Stay up to date on everything that's developing, and please contribute to the Kickstarter if you don't mind. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. Up North Podcast next Wednesday.